Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at traditional IRAs versus Roth IRAs. I'm going to show you that in most cases the traditional will produce better results than the Roth. Also going to show you when to invest in a Roth. I do have a traditional IRA. I also have a Roth IRA, and I contribute to a 401k. And in 2020, I contributed $26,000 into my 401k. $19,500 is the max. If you're over 50, you can play catch up and contribute an additional $6,500. But my rule number one, when it comes to investing, if I can avoid paying taxes today, then I'm going to. I'm not sure why most people wouldn't. But we're going to look at the main differences. I have a calculator to show the financial results of each. One assumption we want to look at in the traditional IRA model may not be true in what happens in the real world. Okay, let's look at a couple of the main differences between the two. This is not exclusive. There are other differences, but if we contribute to a Roth IRA, and I'm going to use $3,000 as an example, it is not the same as contributing to a traditional IRA. Roth IRAs are after-tax dollars, so if we compare the two, $3,000 annually to a Roth, compare that to the traditional, in a traditional IRA, there are tax savings. So if we contribute $3,000 annually, when we file our taxes, $3,000 comes off our taxable income, and we are going to get $947 back. We take that $947 and invest that into the traditional IRA, so we are actually contributing $3,947 in a traditional versus a $3,000 investment annually into a Roth. Now, over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, at 8, 10, or even 12%, that tax savings is going to compound into a whole lot more. And we're going to go into the calculator and look at that. Okay, let's take a look at the calculator. So I got this off the web. You can get a similar one off the web or the same and change the variables, but we're going to make some assumptions that we're going to start out at age 25. And this is just a scale from 1 to 70. We're at 25. Our age of retirement, 65, 40 years of compounding growth. Our adjusted gross income, 100,000. That puts us in the 24% marginal tax bracket. Total contributions, our annual contributions into the Roth is 3,000, and a traditional IRA is 3,000. This model also assumes, and we're going to look at the details, that we take the tax savings and put the tax savings right back in the traditional. Some other assumptions, we're going to assume we're going to earn 7% on our investment. Again, we're in the 24% tax bracket. When we retire and start drawing out of the traditional, this model assumes we're going to fall into the 15% tax bracket and pay taxes on that. And the benefit of the Roth is when we retire and start drawing funds out of the Roth, it is tax-free. We do not pay taxes. So we look at the totals at retirement after the calculations. Traditional IRA plus the tax savings. We're going to look at the details in a sec. But the traditional IRA and the tax savings comes out slightly more than the results from the Roth IRA. Now let's go look at some of the details in the report. Going down to the spreadsheet on the results summary, if we look at total contributions are the same. Compounding at 7%. Both of them come out to $640,829. And the tax savings. So the traditional IRA has a tax savings. Remember, at $900 or at $3,000 annual contributions and falling into a 24% tax bracket, we're going to save $947 a year in taxes. We take that and invest it, and it grows at an annual rate of 7%. That comes out to $99,082. There is no value, there is no tax savings in the Roth, so that's zero. If we look at taxes at retirement, traditional pays taxes, we fall into the 15% tax bracket, and that comes out to $96,124. And again, the Roth IRA, you do not pay taxes, and that's probably why most people like that better. But if we look at the values at the end, at age 65, the traditional comes out slightly better than that. Now, if we go back to the model, so this is a big assumption here that When we retire, our tax rate is going to drop. We're going to fall into the 15% tax bracket. But what happens if that is zero for the traditional IRA? So I do have some evidence that I want to share. Found an article that showed me some surprising results. So let's look at that real quick. So this is one article, talks about Roth and traditionals. Got off the web. If we look at that, it talks about some of the details and differences, but this is the main point. Enter the Boston College study. So they did a study and found out and published this, that 4/5 of households in retirement will pay an effective tax rate of 0% or nearly zero. So that's a big deal. So our traditional IRA model assumes we're going to pay taxes. And in the world, the Boston College study showed that 80% of us don't actually pay taxes when we're in retirement, or it's close to zero. Just assume it's zero. So let's change that in our model and plug in zero and see the differences then. So we're going back to our model. We assumed originally we're going to fall into the 15% tax bracket when we retire, but let's change that to zero and see what happens. So we change that to zero. Go back, look at the results. So by changing that to zero, that difference grows quite a bit. In the traditional IRA, that value becomes $739,910 versus the Roth at $640,829. So that's a big difference. That is a big difference. So the traditional IRA, one of the assumptions that we assumed originally is we're going to fall into the 15% tax bracket, and more than likely that's not the case. More than likely we're going to be paying zero or close to zero when we retire. So one of the reasons I believe that most people choose the Roth, a lot of people do choose it because they think that when they retire, you're going to fall into a higher tax bracket. So if that is indeed the case, let's assume that we do fall into a higher tax bracket. And let's look at the results. So I'm going to change this. Let's just assume that our tax bracket stays the same at 24%. And when we retire, our income's still going to be high enough. We're going to fall into the 24% tax bracket, and let's look at the results. Now look at the difference. Traditional value of the traditional IRA value falls below the Roth. So the traditional value is $586,111, and the Roth is over $640,000. So if you think that you're going to fall into a higher tax bracket when you retire, then the Roth IRA may be the better vehicle for you. But more than likely, we're going to pay lower income taxes, and at lower income taxes, the traditional IRA is going to be higher value. So again, if you're trying to decide which one to choose, include your financial advisor. They can go through the results with you and show you the same thing I just showed you, and you can make your own decisions. Thank you and have a nice day.